Hello and welcome to the Virtual Hub. In this session, I'm going to walk you through the So You Want to Make Calls with Teams session. My name is Laszlo Shomi. I am a Senior Program Manager on the Teams engineering team. This session is part of the Microsoft Teams Chalk Talk series of session, which I will point you at the end of this session. In this abbreviated version, we're going to focus on identifying what calling options are available and what's right for you in Teams. We're going to also configure calling options in Microsoft Teams, and I'm going to walk you through a quick demo about it. First and foremost, let's talk about voice, video, and meetings in Teams. Microsoft Voice Services supports two main workloads, Office 365 and Microsoft 365. I use these two names interchangeably. Audio conferencing for Skype for Business Online and Microsoft Teams meetings. And the other component is the phone system capabilities in Microsoft Teams and Skype for Business Online. Voice services are available a la carte or are included as your parts of your Office 365 enterprise licenses, E5 in Office 365 and Microsoft 365. For customers that do not want to use cloud for voice, they can deploy on-premises Skype for Business Server architecture, which most recent release is Skype for Business Server 2019, and still leverage Office 365 licensing capabilities. Voice services tie in closely with meetings and video. And customers do not required to have both audio conferencing and phone system deployed. I will talk more about this in an upcoming slide. And this training is very much focusing on cloud architecture and Microsoft Teams, and we are not going to cover Skype for Business Online or on-premises capabilities much. Teams calling capabilities. You get a phone system in the cloud when you get Microsoft Teams client. All-in-one communication platform, so the client integrates and is part of chat, files, meeting, application services, and calling, all-in-one capabilities. Calling is on by default for every user in Teams, so voice over IP capabilities, send and receive VoIP calls are enabled by default. You can also add dial tone services seamlessly, and we're going to focus on these dial tone services today. Microsoft Teams, hub for teamwork. It is the PBX system as part of Microsoft Teams. We can enable dial tone services one of two ways. One is Microsoft Calling Plans, where Microsoft is your PSTN service provider, or via direct routing. And direct routing has two flavors. From Microsoft Teams point of view, they are exactly the same. One, you terminate a SIP trunk on premises via session border controller. You manage that device and you configure it to connect to Office 365. Or you contract with your PSTN dial tone provider who provides you that SIP trunk, and they connect via session border controller to our services. From our point of view, is the same service. From customer point of view, either the customer manages the device or provider manages that device, thereby not having any equipment on premises for the customer. Pair these two together, we can reach a worldwide audience for PSTN dial tone services. Microsoft Calling Plan provides you with rapid provisioning. I will show you in the demo. We can acquire numbers within minutes and assign it to users or services when it comes to conference calling. You can port numbers and enable dynamic emergency calling as well using this service. We offer various calling plans, local, long distance, and international, which you can assign to your users. Using direct routing, where we have a PSTN service provider and we have our phone system in Office 365, we connect these two together via a session border controller. Again, this can be homed on premises for a user, or it can be homed in the service provider's data center. We assign a range of numbers to it, which will go through this trunk, be connecting to Office 365. And you can also connect third-party voice applications or analog devices to this session border controller. And you can manage them from there and make calls from any of the device and across between the third-party applications to the phone system in Office 365 seamlessly. Some considerations about direct routing. Let's talk about service numbers first. Service numbers are designed to handle high concurrency of calls. Call queues, audio attendant are all supported through direct routing. Conferencing number, however, are not going through direct routing at this time. The exception to this, if you are parts of US government or cloud or parts of the DoD, we allow conferencing numbers to go through that environment through direct routing. Dial-in numbers are provided by the conferencing service. These are Microsoft numbers. It includes dial-back capability. So you deploy conferencing, including the dial-in and dial-back numbers. You do not require to deploy direct routing. All numbers for conferencing provided by the service. Dynamic emergency calling available for calling plans and direct routing. However, direct routing requires some additional emergency routing service provider. I provide you some links here, AKMS DR-SBC, an additional deep dive session about emergency calling at AKMS Teams Academy. And last but not least, very important, direct routing is not supported for Skype for Business services. A user must be in a Teams-only experience to use direct routing. It is also true the user must be in a Teams-only experience to use Microsoft calling plans also. Direct routing and calling plans can be mixed and matched together. In this scenario, Microsoft calling plan needs to be the default number. Currently, we offer Microsoft calling plan in 12 different countries. And we also, coming later this year, we're lighting up an additional 6 countries for Microsoft calling plan. And direct routing is available all other countries. You can mix and match both as you need. All right, demo time. So let's get to work. I'm going to log into my test tenant. We're going to enable acquire some numbers for individual users. We're going to also assign those numbers. We're going to set up some conferencing numbers and talk about both these number types a little bit and how we manage them. So let's get to the console. I'm going to go to portal.office. Log into my favorite test tenant. And because I am an administrator in my tenant, I will have an option to go to the admin console, which I could have access directly by going to admin.microsoft.com. And furthermore, I could have access directly to the Teams admin console by going to the direct link at admin.teams.microsoft.com. All are perfectly acceptable ways to get to the console. So let's dive into straight to voice services and phone numbers. You will see the structure here. Phone numbers acquired by this tenant already, the location of those numbers, the number type, which can be user or service numbers. And then you see the status of the number. It could be assigned to a user or unassigned or assigned to a conference bridge, as a service number would be, or assigned to an application already. This is a call queue or an audio attendant, for example. And I have plenty of unassigned numbers in various cities around the country. I can add numbers, which we're going to do in a second, or I can also port numbers. Porting the numbers, we give you a walkthrough of what you need to do to submit a port order. And for larger orders, we can also help you with facilitating these orders. I can look at my order history, numbers I acquired in this test tenant. But let's go back to numbers here. Let's request a number. Oh, let's get the numbers. Austin. I'm going to select the country. I'm requiring these new numbers. So let's head over. Let's get some user subscriber numbers. You see the additional number types available here. Dedicated or toll-free conference bridge numbers, dedicated toll-free call queue numbers or auto attendant numbers. But let's focus on users right now. I need to have a location assigned to every number I am acquiring. I can add a new location. Or I can look at the existing locations I already acquired. Once a location is added to the system, it cannot be edited. I added various Microsoft offices around the country, so it's easier to acquire numbers here. When I go back to phone numbers and adding the numbers, I can just type in a city I already acquired. So let's add a number to Austin, Texas. I can select the area code. Sometimes there are more than one area codes available. Let's just get 3 numbers quickly. Clicking next, take a minute or two. We check the backend inventory, what numbers are available in that city, in that region, or in that area code, and we'll give you choices about it. You will notice that the numbers what's displayed here are generally not sequential. The first 6 digits may match, but the last 4 digits may not. There is no guarantee that you can get sequential number regardless of what block you are acquiring. Pay attention to that, but that's the way the system will display the numbers for me. I will have 10 minutes to finish this configuration. You will see the numbers here, 4795, 4797, and 4809. So non-sequential numbers were given to me. I can place the order. It will be placed in my queue, or I can cancel this order. I'm going to cancel it. I already acquired plenty of numbers in my test tenant. I have some unassigned numbers here. There you go. User numbers. Houston. I also should have all parts of the country. Portland, Dallas, San Francisco. I need to assign these numbers. Any number I acquired already, I can release it, or I can edit the number here, and I can assign it to, this is a service number, so I can assign it to a conference or a resource. Let's pick a user number and edit it. And I can assign this to a user. I can search for a user. The user needs to be licensed, of course, and I can assign them here. Another way to assign a number to a user is go to the user itself. I'm going to pick one of my users on the roster here who is already licensed. And let's say our scenario that this user is moving from one city to another. It is Alan DeYoung, who has a phone number already. You will see it under general information. Alan is working in our San Francisco office, Microsoft office in San Francisco. Alan could keep that number, of course, moving to a different state, or I can assign another number available in my roster of the numbers I already acquired. Any of these numbers, I can reassign that. Everything gets updated for the user. The user doesn't have a number assigned to them already. Of course, they need to be licensed. Then I can assign the number to them. Similarly, since we are here already, I will show you changing the audio conferencing number for Alan. Alan has our default San Francisco number assigned to him. I can select any other number. If I have toll-free numbers, I can also assign any of those. And I can control some behavior. This is the dial out behavior. Don't allow, and so on. Okay. Very simple. We acquired some numbers. We assign it to the users. Very straightforward, very quick for a licensed user already. Let's look at meetings. So I look at conference bridges here. You will get a similar table like you saw in the user numbers. I need to acquire the number under voice services phone numbers, of course, the service numbers. And in this table, you see phone numbers, a number type would be a toll or toll-free. You also see it's a dedicated or shared number to your tenant. Dedicated numbers are unique to your organizations. Shared numbers are available worldwide with local dialing capabilities. There is a location for each of these numbers, of course, and a primary language, which varies in each local dialings. You will see one numbers which will show you default. This is the default conference dialing number for every user who does not have a dedicated number assigned to them. Okay. I can edit this number. I can assign additional languages to that conference bridge. If you are a multilingual organization, you can also set the bridge settings, some information around that. And when I look at my dedicated numbers, let's say this fictitious company has 4 offices around the United States. We have 2 dedicated numbers in San Francisco. One of them is the default number, a conference dialing number in Chicago and New York City. Let's add another toll number for this organization. This organization may be opening an office in New Zealand. I already acquired the number, conference dialing number in New Zealand. I can select that number and I can apply that. It will be displayed just as any other number. And from there on, I can assign it to an actual user. So this quick demo, in a matter of few minutes, I acquired phone numbers, I acquired conference dialing numbers, and I configured it and assigned them to my users. Okay. Back to our content here. So now we configured Microsoft calling plans and conference numbers for my user. Let's focus on direct routing a little bit. At the high-level configuration steps for direct routing, we need to configure the session border controller itself. Then we need to connect to that session border controller from Office 365 point of view. We need to configure some voice routing. How are we going to route numbers? What numbers going to those trunks? Optionally, we may have to do some phone number translations if we enable such a things. And we need to enable the users with a phone number. All right, let's go through this. Configuring the SBC. Configuration documented by session border controller vendors. You can reach that configuration at akms-dr-sbc-config. We certify vendors. We detail the configuration item. You can reach it there. At a high level, your SBC requires some licenses. Number of trunks, number of sessions, different vendors license them differently. You need the licenses for it. Session border controllers are firewalls for voice services. They need an internal and a WAN IP address. You need to know what's inside, what's outside for these connectivity points. It needs a certificate. Each time we set up a session, we require a certificate, bidirectionally authenticate that session. We need to identify some signaling and media ports. So each call consists of 2 actions. One action is signaling. We're negotiating how the 2 endpoints are going to talk to each other based on capabilities. And then when media starts to flow, one of those signaling negotiation picked ports and media starts flowing between the endpoints. We can select some SIP and SRTP options, select codecs from the SBC point of view, and we need to set some routing capabilities. Okay, our SBC is licensed and configured. It has an IP address, name. Now let's connect to this SBC from Office 365 point of view. So this is a PowerShell session to our tenant, where we use the new CsOnlinePSTNGateway commandlet to create a new gateway. We identified a fully qualified domain name of this gateway. in this scenario, sbc1.contoso.1, for example, keep in mind you cannot use the start.onmicrosoft.com DNS name. Best practice is to give it an actual name to the users, not use wildcards. So at a SIP signaling port, 5068, 5069, the common SIP signaling ports. Set the max concurrent sessions. This is a recommended settings. We want to make sure that based on what's licensed for you, what the capabilities of that session border controller, we're not trying to send more calls than it can handle. So it's a recommended settings. You set the max concurrent session for the gateway. It's especially important if you have multiple gateways. Enable the device, set to true, forwarding call history, forward PAI true. We will talk about those settings in a second. There are some other settings here you can see for the device. We're not going to cover all of them. We cover the most common one. SIP signaling port, where negotiation happens between Office 365 and the session border controller. We need to know what port to talk on. Device can be enabled or in a draining state or disabled. If you're doing any maintenance from the device, you can remove it from the pool of gateways. Forward PAI is the pre-asserted identity. If enabled, it will be forwarded with the call. The default setting is false. It provides a way to identify the identity of the caller or anonymous if enabled. Forwarding call history by default is false. When enabled, we send 2 additional header history info and referred by headers on with the call. SIP options enabled. It's set to true by default, and we recommend you leave this enabled. This allows us to monitor and alert on the system. Looking at the capability of your session border control, we want to be able to monitor that device from our services point of view. Max concurrent sessions, I already talked about that you should enable this. Enable fast failover timer. It's important when you have multiple devices in your environment. One device fails, we rapidly fail over to a second device, so the user don't have to wait to complete that call. Media bypass is supported. You have to look at the specific configurations by vendor at the link I provided earlier. The default is false. Now let's set up voice routing. So we have a device, we connected to it from Office 365 point of view. Now configure voice routing. If you look at the configuration objects, voice routing policy, PSTN usage, voice route, dial plan, gateway, and trunk, it's very similar to what you may have used to see in Skype for Business on-premises environment. Matter of fact, it is exactly the same. So if you're familiar with it, how a voice route was set up in an on-premises environment, it is the same for online. We have PSTN usages object, which define a specific class of calls, such as internal, local, regional, long distance, that can be made by users. By themselves, these PSTN usages sitting on the middle, they don't do anything. They connect voice routing policies, which I assign to users, dictating their capabilities, and voice routes, which assign to gateways that it can connect to. There's just the glue between voice routing policies and voice routes. And the order of PSTN usages is critical. First one matches, or others are not evaluated afterwards. So it's best practice, of course, is to have your most restrictive policy first and the least restrictive policy last, sort of the catch-all. If all else fails, do something with that call. Now let's put this together. Let's have a simple voice routing configuration for this direct routing setup. We create a new online PSTN gateway called sbc1.contoso.com. So I'm using the new CsOnlinePSTNGateway, specifying a fully qualified domain name, a SIP signaling port, and I am enabling that. And I'm leaving all other SIP options at default. Let's create a PSTN usage. So creating the container where all this holding everything together, and we're just gonna call this a global policy, call it unrestricted. I create a voice route, the new CsOnline voice route. I call this unrestricted, and I assign a number pattern to be star. So anything what's being dialed by the user will be sent to this gateway. I need to provide a gateway, list of gateways. I only have one at the moment. Priority 1, we will talk about priority in the multiple gateway scenario, but you need to provide a priority. And I'm assigning this to a PSTN usage, this scenario called unrestricted. Then I create a voice routing policy, which I will be assigning to the users, and I'm linking it to the online PSTN usage, unrestricted, and I'm done. So any number this user dials, indicated by this dot star, will be sent to this PSTN, SBC for further handling, and then you can make other routing decisions on this session border controller. Now let's look at a more advanced configuration where we have multiple gateways. So I set up a pair of gateways, SBC1 and 2, using the same online PSTN gateway command, safe signal link port, and I enable them. So let's call these two are in a data center, in a regional data center. I create a PSTN usage for US and Canada. So numbers, what will be handled by this are regional numbers in US and Canada. I create a voice route to these gateways. And voice routes will be handling +1425 and +14206 numbers. These are local numbers in Redmond, Seattle area. So when a user type +1425 or +1206 and any 7-digit afterwards, will be sent to one of these two gateways, SBC1 or SBC2 with priority 1. So when a voice routing decision being made, we start it with these two gateways and assign it to an online PSTN usage to US and Canada. Then I'm going to set up a second pair of gateways, SBC3 and 4, in a secondary data center in the same region, for example. I create a voice route for these two gateways also, and they will also handle +1425 and +1206 numbers with the priority of 2. So within a site, I can't control which gateway we're going to send the call to. It randomly happens. Neither of these gateways are available. We will fail over to the priority 2 site and send it to one of these two gateways in that site. Again, handling +1425 206 and any 7-digit afterwards. List of gateways, priority 2, assign it to online PSTN usage and US and Canada. Okay, so we're handling all local numbers or regional numbers here. What about the rest of the US and Canada? We set up a third pair of gateway, SBC5 and 6. It can be in any of the data center, of course. I create a voice route for them. Any other +1 number. So the number pattern we're matching here is +1. When an evaluation happens, first we look at, is it a 425 or 206 number? Then it will be handled by these two voice routes. If it's any other number starting with +1 and a 10-digit number, we will send it to SBC5 and 6 with an online PSTN usage US and Canada. So the order is very important for the PSTN usage. Last but not least, we create a voice routing policy, which we'll be assigning to the users and link it to US and Canada PSTN usage. Okay. What about migrations? You're coming from an on-premises environment or an online environment using Skype for Business. You need to migrate. What are your choices? In Skype for Business Online, you may use Microsoft Calling Plan already, where Microsoft is your PSTN dial tone provider. Or you may configure Cloud Connector Edition, CC, where we have this virtualized environment, generally with a session border controller on premises, connecting you to a SIP trunk. If you deployed Skype for Business Server on premises, you may have deployed a full on-premises enterprise voice. Your users are homed on premises and voice routing happens on premises. You may have configured on-premises configuration hybrid or OPCH, which means you have Skype for Business Online users taking advantage of on-premises voice resources. So let's see how migration happens here. Teams calling options, as we discussed, are Microsoft Calling Plan or direct routing, with direct routing being the preferred way. It's available worldwide. If you're using Microsoft Calling Plan, there is no migration needed. You assign the user a Teams-only user experience. So from the user point of view, the client changes. They're going to make and receive calls using the Teams client, of course. But from the backend point of view, there are no other changes needed. Calls we route and numbers is not changing. It's exactly the same as it is with their Skype for Business account. Deploy Cloud Connector Edition. You could port the numbers to Microsoft Calling Plan. It is an option if you live in one of those countries where we offer Microsoft Calling Plan as an option, or you need to migrate to direct routing. Your Cloud Connector Edition may already came with a session border controller. You can reuse the session border controller in most cases, add a second trunk, configure direct routing, and go from there. Exactly the same two options are available coming from an on-premises environment. You port the numbers or you migrate to direct routing. Your starting options differs, but your journey is exactly the same. You only have two options to enable PSTN dial tone in Teams. Right, reach the end of this abbreviated session here. We talked about what are the two calling options available in Teams, and we configured both of them. I showed you Microsoft Calling Plan in the tenant admin acquired numbers, talked about conferencing capabilities, and at the high level, I also walk you through on direct routing configuration. Because these are abbreviated sessions for the virtual hub, I want to direct you to Teams upgrade sessions and Teams Chalk Talks. These are two sessions we're offering. You can register using these links. We'll lend you there, AKMS Skype to Teams Planning and AKMS Teams Chalk Talks, where we refresh the content, we change it over time. So come back and visit these sites often. Last but not least, if you have any follow-up to these sessions, you can reach us at teamsit@microsoft.com. It's come to my team, and we will follow up from there. I want to thank you for coming to this virtual hub session, and I hope to see you in other virtual hub sessions in the future.